welcome.
That took up enough time.
Okay,
All right, I'm admitting everyone now.
thank you. This is meeting number 512 of the Lake George Park Commission. And we'll jump right into item number 1 on our agenda. Do we have a quorum? And I think we decided we have 6 on.
We
We
did.
have 8, I think.
Yep.
Okay, we do have a quorum then. Thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting. You've all had an opportunity to read them. Any comments? Any
Move to
motions?
accept.
Motion to accept, seconded. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Nays? None. Passed and carried. Fiscal action report and expenditures. You've had a chance to review that. Any discussion? Any motions?
Move to accept.
Motion seconded. No further discussion. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Fiscal actions report is accepted. Lake George harmful algae bloom update. Mr. Dave Wick, Executive Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this has been a topic of considerable interest to residents, visitors to the Lake George region. So there's been a lot of people doing a lot of work on the harmful algae bloom issue. I figured I would just give you a little bit of background on where we are right now and show you a couple pictures if you haven't seen kind of what it looks like here in Lake George. First, I want to read I asked Jackie Lenderum, who runs the DEC harmful algae bloom program. I asked her for a few words, if she could, kind of on the current status of what they know about Lake George, so I can just read it to you here. She says, DEC confirmed 14 HAB reports from Lake George in 2021. The earliest was July 20. 7 were received October 6th to October 10th, and 6 reports between the 8th and 11th of November. As per existing protocols, DOH was notified of each bloom. CSLAP samplers collected samples on 2 occasions that were analyzed at the Upstate Freshwater Institute. The bloom composition both times was similar to last fall, Dolichospermum, no toxins detected. Of the 6 reports this November, 4 were in the Harris Bay area, specifically Harris, Sandy, and Warner Bays, and 2 were in Basin Bay and Cotton Point Road. So if I could, I'll share my screen and just give you a quick review. Let me know, Justin, when you can see this here. A quick review. Can you folks see the screen I have?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Great, awesome. So I just wanted, for folks that haven't seen the recent harmful algae blooms, this is kind of what they would tend to look like. This is kind of a collected, if you look on the right-hand side of the shoreline, you see that kind of green line. That is a harmful algae bloom. So just so everybody on the call is aware, the ones that we've had here in Lake George so far have been extremely diffuse and very low impact. We've been talking with DEC, and yesterday we had a conversation with Rick Relier from the Jefferson Project, and Rick and I were speaking, and he said they should be ready to come to the commission in January or February with a much more detailed analysis about the HABs in Lake George, and perhaps, hopefully, some of the root causes. So we don't have that information today. Today's just a very quick update. But this is essentially what they look like. If you're to take HABs and stick them in a bucket, this is kind of what you might see, which is a very kind of diffuse, it almost looks like pollen kind of impacts on the actual water column itself. This is a kind of a few images. The first on the bottom left was the first one that was identified on November 7th. It's Kristen Wild from the Lake George Association on the left. Also, I'd like to thank Emily Boucher from the LGA. She was the one that she gave a presentation to my Lake George Rotary group, and this I stole a bunch of her slides. So thanks to her for putting these together. So we had really one event last year, and it's been followed up by a few different events that have lasted several days this year. Again, you almost have to be looking for them to notice that they've come in to Lake George, or they've identified themselves in Lake George. It is called Delicospermum. That is the only cyanobacteria so far that's been identified here in Lake George. This is a very close-up microscope.
I'll just state for the record that it's Tuesday, November 23rd, meeting number 512. And this is a renewal of the original meeting that was terminated early due to a electronic malfunction. As far as we know, we were hacked in some way. And we've now re-entered into session, and we do have a quorum. We're going to handle two items in an abbreviated way because of our technical difficulty. The first item, Commissioner Mason has a continuing question on the subject we were studying when we left the HABs, and then we will go directly to the dock modification up in the town of Hague, do handle that issue, and then I suppose we will probably then seek an early adjournment for the guys to work on the technical. So Bill, why don't you just go through what you want, please?
Well, my question was about the dots that they showed in the pictures of the beginning of the HAB, and do they always happen? And I've just received, we all got something from Ginger showing a YouTube video that I'm going to be watching afterwards that maybe will answer the question. We need as much information as we can possibly get to educate ourselves and to educate the public, because I'm getting tons and tons of questions from people in the neighborhood that worry, especially about the ones that drink the water, are just concerned and want to get answers as quickly as possible. And so I'm going to keep talking about HABs probably every meeting from now on.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Important subject, important subject. Going down to item number 6, our project review actions report. And Joe, are you, I don't see a picture of you, but I assume you're on and you, okay.
Yep. Projects Resolution 2021-48. Project accept the project review actions report. Whereas the commission has received and reviewed the project review actions report prepared by the staff and dated 11/16/2021. The project review committee recommends acceptance of the project review actions report. Now therefore be resolved, the commission directs that the project review actions report be incorporated in the minutes of the full commission meeting. So moved.
Moved. I see a second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Nays? And the motion is carried. Now, Joe Toolen, are you on board so you can guide us through the dock modifications submitted by William Pennell in the town of Hague?
Actually, that was reviewed by Jason, so I will turn it over to Jason to introduce that project.
Okay.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you, Chairman. Today, I'll present on one application requiring commission resolution. So on September 2nd, staff received a dock modification permit submitted on behalf of William Pennell, who's here today, working with Chris Gerard, the dock doctor, is also here. This is for a private lakefront property located at 3 Forest Bay Road South in the town of Hague. The proposed work would replace an existing U-shaped crib dock and boathouse with a U-shaped pile dock and sun deck that has an accompanying PWC lift, boat lift, and mooring. During the public comment period, we received notices of opposition from neighbors on either side of the property, the Niebels and the Miller's Ears. I believe that they're here too. Visual obstruction was noted as the primary driver of opposition. However, there were also concerns of boat traffic, construction timeline, and water quality. These comments are provided in your packet on page 23. Staff visited the site earlier this fall, and we recommended it to the full commission level to settle the resolution. The applicant's agents provided a visualization plan and a visualization simulation in the field and apparatus to demonstrate the potential impacts of the construction. And we were there last Tuesday, the 16th, with Commissioner Stanek, Burns, and LaBombard, excuse me. Also in the packet are some explanations of some other issues that were mentioned by the opposition, the neighbors. So those are on page 18. And now I can ask the applicant or the agent if they'd like to speak any more about the project. So Tom or Chris, if you'd like to speak at all.
Good morning, Christopher, Doc Doctors on behalf of William Pennell. Great summary of the project. It's a basically we're proposing to install a U-shaped dock, less than 700 square feet, with an open-sided Sundeck structure, rails and aesthetics to match the house, which is under construction now. That's been a little bit of a process. The Sundeck top of rail is going to be roughly 2 feet taller than the existing peak of the gable roof of the open-sided boathouse. We had deployed 2 markers showing the outer 2 corners of the dock, and also an elevation reference at the northernmost corner for the top of the rail last week to the commission. I think the pile dock is pretty widespread on the lake, environmentally speaking. Obviously, it's not impacting as much lake bed as a rock-filled cribwood in today's world of design, helping to minimize water quality issues and concerns. The Sundeck structure has become kind of the status quo versus, you know, our gables and hip styles and stuff like that, which you still do see around the lake. If you look at the orientation, we're kind of keeping the orientation of the said boathouse and dock. It's sliding a little bit more towards the northern property line based on rock ledge and shallow water depths, allowing us, so we've got about 3.5 to 6 feet of water within the slip. Customers opted to put the PWC lift to the north slip, which virtually eliminates the ability to put a 24 or 26 foot boat in there, which also helps keep navigation cleaned up between the northern neighbor and this dock. As you can see, there's roughly about 73 feet of distance from the corner of the northern dock to the northern corner of the proposed dock. So that's allowing about 50 feet from the neighbor's dock to the property line. So I think that keeps that really clean. With the U pointing straight out into the lake, it allows that boats come in bow first with the stern out and back off accordingly. So no need to come parallel to the shoreline, a lot like probably what tends to happen with the northern dock. I think the big thing was concerns with visual obstructions, and you know, Anthony's nose is a dominant setting to the northeast. That would tends to be the view from the Nebel property, and even when you sit out on this proposed property, that's the dominant view for everybody from those 2 properties. The Miller's Ear kind of hides itself up around the corner a little bit. House and dock kind of pointing more to the east, the southeast. When you're looking from the dock, or even from the front porch or the house. If you do look off the side porch or out the side window, you probably have a tendency to be looking at trees during the vegetative season, and probably towards the mountains and the skyline, and not so much of probably be looking right over the rails based on what we had done for a mock-up last week. So I think that's all I have to run down in addition to the application, and appreciate the opportunity and look forward to answering any questions.
Thanks, Chris. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on behalf of or against the project? Or I saw Mr. Pennell. Did you want to have some comments, Mr. Pennell?
Sure. We didn't touch on the mooring at all, and concerns about view impact of the mooring. We don't plan to have a boat moored all the time. We would put a sunfish sailboat out on the mooring. And that really, from my perspective, having a mooring off the property with a boat on it is going to make all of our properties safer from people driving along the shoreline. They can't be as close as they normally do. So I view that as a positive from a safety and boat traffic perspective, to keep tourists and others who are cruising through Forest Bay further from our shoreline. So just touch on that piece of the application.
Thank you. Justin, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I certainly don't want our view impacted either. So I don't want some monstrous boathouse blocking the view to the north as well, because it's the same view. We're focused on Anthony's nose as well. So we're not going to put something up that's going to impede us from being able to see it as well. So I think we're not building something with any objective to have an impaired view.
This
Okay.
is Pamela Miller-Zier, and I would just like to respectfully say, when Jason was out, or Justin, I'm sorry, was out, I did ask him to look at the view from my side porch. So while you're right, my house is oriented more to the east, we do look north all the time on our front porch. And in my kitchen, when I'm cooking, I have the windows across the north side of my house. I spend a lot of time cooking and I look right up the lake. And that is the view that my family has had for 81 years. I like that view. It's an unobstructed view. It's part of what makes the lake for us. And I'm not excited about having that blocked. The way the boathouse is now, it's tucked in. And yes, we see a little bit of it, but it's not right in the middle of my view. And this new boathouse is going to be smack in the middle of our view.
Thank you.
Respectfully, with that comment, there used to be a very large pine tree that was sort of in between your kitchen and the boathouse and Anthony's nose that was removed during construction. So I'm not sure that is a fully accurate statement.
Well,
Okay.
I can tell you that we've spent our whole lives on that porch and I know what view we've had.
All right, folks, let me interject one thing here. The commission normally listens to the applicant and then listens to anyone else from the audience who is in support or perhaps not in support. And then we'll move into comments by the commissioners, specifically those who visited on the site visit recently. And we'll move to action. You're all entitled to say, we'll give you a chance to say whatever you want, but we're not too looking forward to one-on-one interjections and interactions. So keep your thoughts collected. And if you think I'm ignoring you, I'm not, because I'm on a limited screen here, and make sure that you get to say what you want to say before we move on. So we've heard the applicant, we've heard one neighbor. I understand there's another neighbor that may be speaking. Maybe they didn't make the second load.
No, the Nebo family is here and would have some comments as well.
Okay, go ahead.
So the other opposition, in addition to what Pam mentioned related to obstructed view, ours is primarily from the side part of our house as we look up the lake, not at Anthony's nose, but from 2 rooms from the house in particular, as well as our porch. And then in addition to that, we have a very strong opposition to the timeline of the project, given that the 2021 season has been tremendously impacted by the build of the house, and the proposed timeline is to start in May of 2022 and go through the entire season again.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to comment on this project? Mr. Pennell, you're set.
I would just like to say that we too agree with the Nebo family about the construction timeline and the disruption to our enjoyment of the lake during the summer season.
Okay,
Can Chris comment on the timeline of the project?
if you'd like to, Chris, would you like to make a comment on Mr. Pennell's request?
Yeah, I can. Oh, it was a letter. I guess. The installation, I mean, whenever anything is work boat or work barge dependent, it's very tough to put a specific week or month on something. So I've been doing this for 17 years, and most of my applications will come through with about a year long, especially when it has a boathouse structure being built on top of it. That may be done by our company or the builder. A lot of time you will see a 1 year window timeframe put on that, because it's very hard to coordinate two contractors to come in and finish something. I can speak specifically to our company. A pile dock of this system would take roughly 5 to 6 days to install. It's all done via water. It's pre-manufactured product that's floated in. Our crews come in a single van typically to the property. So a lot of it's very much different than house construction, where you have 4 or 5 different general construction or subcontractors, that type of stuff. So we're usually in, usually out. Obviously, we run hours of try to keep our hours to 7 to 4:30, 7 to 5. The season's short. The Sundeck Construction, whether it's going to be us or the gentleman that's building the house, it's yet to be determined. I don't think there's a time frame on that. I can say our company typically doesn't build Sundecks or boathouses till the off season when our boats can't move. And there's also less people at their properties listening to generators and stuff like that. So I guess I would say we're a quicker, more streamlined. I'm definitely sensitive to the neighbors and their mornings and their evenings and enjoying the lake. They pay a lot in taxes as well. But I think we're the system and the process of how we do pile docks versus if we were to build a traditional crib dock, we would be there for 5 to 6 weeks just for the foundation to be done, because that's a lot of on-site labor to do timber stuff and fill with cribs and stuff. So it's a quicker process. It doesn't fix the concern, but I think that's just kind of something specific to our system and our company and how we schedule stuff.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we've heard support and we've heard some neighbors' positions. The commissioners that visited the project, do you have any views on it? I'm not sure who was there.
Yeah, well, Kathy was there along with, I think Bill was there also. We visited the site. We went on the porch, both for the south property, and then we walked the north property. The visual impact, in my opinion, is not significant. You can see the mountains from either side. The impact is, as Chris indicated, he had put up some poles and sticks that indicated the height of the dock itself. And so I think, in my opinion, it's not a major visual impact at this point.
Okay.
Kathy?
I thought it was really good that the dock doctors were there and the diver raised the poles, and the fact that there's going to be one of those wire type of rails where you can completely see through. We really put some good time in there, and I don't think there's going to be any kind of a negative impact as far as the losing your vistas. No, I think it's going to be fine.
Okay. Thank you.
Erin, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was also there and looking at it from a visual impact. There was a little bit of visual loss to the water body itself, but not to the view or the vistas that are of significant value. I agree with what the other commissioners surmised. And I was thankful for the visual, the pole that they had up so you could really see it well, what the impact was going to be. And I did not find it to be a significant impact in that view shed.
Okay. Any other commissioner have any questions of the subject? Commissioner Stanek, do we have a resolution?
Yes, resolution 2021-49, approve a dock modification. Application number is DWM 21-30131. Dock modification, applicant is William Pennell. Whereas the applicant has applied for a permit to modify pre-existing and covered U-shaped dock by construction of a new U-shaped dock with a sun deck. And the Lake George Park Commission has reviewed the application, supporting documents, comments received, and other information which appears in the record. And the commission has made a determination that the project is a type 2 action pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act 6 NYCRR 617.5, and no further review is required for the purposes of the State Environmental Quality Review Act. Whereas the action is considered to be a minor project pursuant to 6 NYCRR 645-5.3. Public notice has been published and distributed in accordance with the commission regulations. And whereas the proposed dock complies with the regulatory design requirements for docks at 646-1.1. Whereas the commission finds that the project will not have an adverse impact on the health, safety, or welfare of the public, the environment, or the resources of the park, will not alter the essential characters of the area in which it is proposed, will not lead to congestion in the park, and will not have an undue visual, cultural, audible impact on the neighborhood or the park. Now therefore be resolved, the Lake George Park Commission hereby approves the above application as proposed. So moved.
Motion's made. Is there a second? Second is made. We'll call the commission for a vote by hand. But Justin, are you prepared that you can count the votes?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
The only
thank you.
person that I can't see, I think is Dean Cook. I mean, I see him, but I'm not sure. It looks like he's frozen, so I don't know how much of this Dean has caught. So even without Dean, we still have.
Can you hear me, Justin?
Oh, there he is.
There you go.
Excellent.
Okay.
There you go.
All in favor of the resolution, post by showing a hand, or in Dean's case, audible?
I'll say aye.
All right, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 ayes.
I would say that the motion is carried, positive. Thank you, everybody. Going back to our original discussion, Council and David, do you think we should continue with the meeting as, or short circuit as we had proposed? Carla, are you still there?
No, yep, I'm right here.
Okay, what's your opinion?
Well, it's really up to you. Everything was, that was an action item has been done already, except for approval of the law enforcement committee.
Right.
But other than that, it's really the rest, Dave, and correct me if I'm wrong, the rest are all proposals. There is the e-foil resolution, but that's whether we need to do that today or we can do that in December.
Right.
So based on the fact that we're carrying along right now, we don't seem to have any challenges, Ken, I would encourage you to consider going through the e-foil review. If we're still good with no challenges, we can continue on, or we can call the meeting at that point.
I agree. So let's move right now to item 7, the new recreational use and evaluation of motorized boards for use on Lake George. And Mr. Wick, you get that?
Yeah, I'm going to turn that over to Joe. He's done the majority of the work on this. Joe Thilling.
Thank you, gentlemen. Yeah, so we have a new recreational use. It's essentially a electric motorized surfboard. There's a few different types, e-foils and jet boards, but essentially the same thing, an electric surfboard. Our regulations state that any recreational use that wasn't on the lake in 1991 is a new recreational use and must be reviewed and approved by the commission before its use on the lake. So this is a review of that use. I know we've had a few discussions of it in the past. It should be noted that these are regulated currently by NAV law, the same regulations that apply to specialty prop craft and PWCs apply to these same vessels. I've included that in your packet. We also have some links, and I know we've looked at that earlier as far as what they look like and how they operate. If Joe Johns is on, I'd invite him to speak a little bit to NAV law and how that would influence the use of these vessels on the lake. Joe, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Okay, as Joe said, under New York State navigation law, these are considered specialty craft. And there are regulations that cover these. I'm just going to go through them quickly. They are a motorized vessel under New York State law, so they do have to have a New York State registration, have numbers on them and a sticker. Obviously, you're not going to put them on the side, so probably where you stand, it will have to be numbered. Anybody that operates one of these has got to have a boater safety certificate. They have to have it with them. They cannot, the owner cannot allow someone who does not have a safety certificate to operate it. Same as personal watercraft. The owner and the operator can both get a ticket if that's the case. Anybody riding on one of these e-foils has got to wear a personal flotation device. It's got to be securely fastened and U.S. Coast Guard approved. You must carry a whistle or some sound producing device on these. You have to carry a distress flag, a visual distress flag in case you are in trouble out there. If it is equipped with a lanyard, the lanyard has to be attached to you. From what I understand, a lot of these are handheld devices that aren't attached to the board. So if that's the case, obviously you wouldn't have to have the lanyard attached to you. Times, they can only be operated from sunrise to sunset. Swim areas, it's like a personal watercraft. You cannot operate within 500 feet of a swim area unless you're going to or from a launch. So if you are going in and out of $1 Million Beach, you could proceed at a slow speed, 5 miles an hour, into the launch and back out of the launch. But if you were going through, let's say, Sawmill Bay, you couldn't come across in front of the beach there if you're within 500 feet. The same reckless laws apply to an e-foil as a personal watercraft as far as weaving through congested vessel traffic, jumping the wake of another vessel, which I wouldn't think you would do on these anyway, or swerving at the last possible moment to avoid a collision. You know, you don't want to go towards somebody and then, you know, turn at the last second. So, you know, a lot of the laws are the same as the personal watercraft under New York State navigation law. That's about what covers them as far as the state. None of our regulations for personal watercraft would cover these because we don't define the specialty prop craft.
I'm not sure that if you mentioned that, if I'm using a wireless handheld device, what depowers the e-foil?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with how they operate. I believe when the handheld device, whether it hits the water or, you know, you release the pressure on it, I think that deactivates it.
Like a dead man switch?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. Anybody have any comments on that? Questions? Does anybody have a copy of the resolution that we're talking about? I don't have it in front of me. Joe,
I do.
Commissioner, you're always right on top of that, Joe. Thank you.
All right, resolution 2021-50, approve a new recreational use. Application number is NR 21-450 and a 1. Whereas the commission regulations at 6 NYCRR 646-2.3A and number 1 identify a new recreational activity or use, means a recreational activity not introduced on the waters of Lake George as of January 1st, 1991. And whereas electric surfboards such as e-foils and jet boards have been recognized as a New York new recreational use on Lake George. And whereas pursuant to 646-1.4A, no person shall operate or engage in any new recreational activity as defined in section 646-2.31 of this title or recreational use without first obtaining a special permit from the commission pursuant to this subpart. And whereas pursuant to 645-2.1 AW, permit must means any permit, certificate, license, or other form of commission approval. And whereas New York State navigation law contains existing restrictions governing the use of these vessels to promote safe operation, and whereas new recreational uses are considered to be a major project pursuant to 6 NYCRR 645-5.3, and public notice has been published and distributed as required. And whereas the Lake George Park Commission has reviewed this new recreational use supporting documents, comments received, and other information which appears in the record. And whereas the commission has made a determination that this activity is an unlisted action pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act of 6 NYCRR 617.5, as lead agency for the purposes of the State Environmental Quality Review Act, has made a determination that the project will not have no significant impact on the environment. And whereas the commission finds that the activity will have no adverse impact on the health, safety, or welfare of the public, the environment, or the resources of the park, will not alter the essential characters of the area in which it is proposed, will not lead to congestion in the park, and will not have an undue visual, cultural, audible impact on the neighborhood or the park. Now therefore be resolved, the commission hereby approves the use of electric surfboards operated in compliance with the New York State navigation law as a new recreational use on Lake George. So moved as proposed.
Motion made. Is there a second to it?
Second,
Second.
second.
As a matter of discussion, after the second, I saw a question flash across my screen when we started. Is there an age limit, Lieutenant, on this? I presume they're probably talking about a minimum age. You're
Joe,
muted.
you're muted.
Sorry, I believe it's 14, the same as personal watercraft. It falls under those regulations.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
We've got a motion on board and a second. All in favor? Vote of hands.
Aye. Aye.
I see quite a few. Justin, we're in good shape.
Yep.
Okay. Nays? Hearing no nays, the resolution is passed as read. Let's jump to the Law Enforcement Committee report, which I'm lucky enough to have and give. Lieutenant Johns gave a short Law Enforcement Committee. We still have one boat in the water ready to go, should it be needed, and it'll be there until we see ice or Christmas, whichever happens first, probably. And so I will read Resolution 2021-51, whereas the Law Enforcement Committee met via teleconference on November 23rd, 2021 to review matters pertaining to the Lake George Park Commission's Marine Patrol and the Commission's Law Enforcement Program. And whereas I'll delete this because there were no active law enforcement cases reviewed in executive session this morning. Whereas the Law Enforcement Committee has reported on the results of that committee meeting at this full commission meeting. And whereas the Law Enforcement Committee recommends acceptance of this month's law enforcement report. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the commission accepts the report of the Law Enforcement Committee. Do I hear a motion on that?
So moved.
Motion's made. A second?
Yep.
Second is made. And all in favor with
Aye.
the vote? Any nays? Law Enforcement Committee resolution is accepted. Now, as long as we're going along smoothly, I think maybe we'll just, I'll give you a thumbnail sketch of the ever interesting subject of septic inspections in the Lake George Park surrounding the body of Lake George. And I've just got some quick notes and take a couple seconds and tell you the program is moving fastly now, quickly. Various things that we've discussed since the last time we talked. We formed I think this has happened since the last meeting. We formed a design standards subcommittee made up of professionals, some that are on the existing ad hoc and some that are new additions to it. And the basic conversations in the two committee meetings design committee meetings that have been held so far, and there are more scheduled, has to do with the particular design of various septic systems and EBUs, et cetera, et cetera. And they're refining those. Recommendations will be available as our regulation comes to fruition as to what will work here, what will work there, et cetera, et cetera. The total ad hoc committee, which is the large group, has discussed things such as and presented it for more discussion, annual maintenance of the systems, APA regs, DEC regs. In other words, we need to comply with both of those New York State bodies, the management of the program, by whom and how, grant monies that hopefully will be available, and who's going to be eligible to apply for the grants, and then who's going to manage the grants as they're applied for and successfully received. Property transfer tracking, because remember that this is not, if this comes to fruition, it will not be a property transfer inspection. It will be inspection for all systems around the lake. New system reviews. In other words, we certainly don't need to inspect your new system if it was installed within however, 3 years, 4 years after the law goes into effect. It's up and running, but we need to track those as they're being done now so that we can have that information at the time. We also need to help our local municipalities to determine if they can co-fund it, determine if they want to co-fund it, help them determine where there might be some monies that would allow them to help co-fund it. And then the internal committee, which is made up of the 6 commissioners sitting on the septic committee. We've talked about preferences as to what kind of systems we're going to be allowing, where do we start? In other words, if we have 6,000 systems and we boil it down to 3,200 that are in the critical environmental area, and then how do we boil that down to who gets to be first during the first years of the program? Annual management, this is going to be an ongoing project. Someone's got to run it annually. There's got to be some funds to be able to run it. There's going to have to be some either employees to do the inspections or outside contractors to do the inspections. Those are the type of things that we're debating. Further funding for it. You're talking about employees, you're talking about programs, you're talking about dollar bills. Single party reviews, who out there would help us do our reviews and keep us up to date, and public outreach to the property owners. And this is what we're calling the critical environmental area. We need to start talking to those folks that are there who are theoretically going to be number one, but the number one it's going to take a period of time because we don't do 3,200 inspections between now and 5 o'clock. That's going to be a longer than my lifetime program. So that's it on the update, brief and quick, just for the occasion. Anytime anybody has any questions from staff, commission, public, we are always available for your help and your guidance. Having said that, Dave, do you want to talk about your Milfoil update?
Yeah, it takes maybe about 10 minutes. Once a year, we talk about the Lake George Milfoil program and leave it open to any commissioners or public that have questions. So going back to what we did before, Justin, I'll try to share my screen here. Let me see, disabled screen sharing. I don't know, Justin, you're still online?
Yep, I just made you a co-host, so give it a second. Try it again.
Okay. There we go. Okay.
Somebody keep their hand on the plug.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm right there. Don't worry.
Exactly. Okay, so hopefully everybody can see the screen. Let me reduce that. What we have here is just an overview of the 2021 season. What we continue to do on Lake George for milfoil control is called diver assisted suction harvesting. So See this gentleman right here, his name is Wes. He goes down and hand harvests the milfoil from the bottom of the lake, puts it into a tube that comes up onto this platform here. And then that milfoil is removed, scraped off into buckets and removed off-site and disposed of properly. We had 4 suction harvesters operating around Lake George, really from about June 1st until about mid-October. This is a shot of Sunset Bay, just for folks that don't know what some of the milfoil problems have gotten up to or had gotten up to in the past. We really don't see a lot of this around Lake George anymore, thanks to our partners' funding and our highly competent contractor that's working with us. This is our funding for this past year. It's very much a partnership project between the Park Commission, the LGA, what was the fund, now the LGA. And then we've been very fortunate in having some Department of State money administered through Warren County, and those funds have been advanced by the Lake George Association, which is great. A little over $414,000 in 2021. So not an insignificant program by any stretch. So quick summary, our long-term progress. Our goal when we started with the grant was to try to eliminate all dense beds of milfoil in Lake George within the 3 years of the grant. The grant that we had was approximately $600,000 administered through Warren County, about $200,000 or a little less per year. We're very fortunate to receive that funding. We don't anticipate getting it again, so we kind of have one shot. We think we were successful. We cleared all known dense beds in Lake George, with the exception of Glen Burnie and Sheep Meadow Bay. I'm going to talk about those. And what we've been facing a lot longer than I've been around is some sites rebound pretty quickly with milfoil and some hold up very well. And that's really due to individual site conditions, the amount of native vegetation in the area, how difficult the soils are to work with. So even when we're all done with the dense beds, there will still always exist a need for long-term maintenance to keep any aspiring beds down or some scattered populations from getting a bit more dense. So there'll always be a need for this. And we're going to be talking briefly about a trial potential treatment for 2022. So this is kind of a snapshot. We expect our final milfoil report to be out within the next few weeks from the contractor, AE Commercial Diving. They're out of Manchester, Vermont. This is a quick summary of the sites that we've harvested this year and worked within. Some challenging spots that we continue to struggle with. Just these 3 beds were about $112,000 just this year, and they've continued to recur. Every year we knock them back, they come back sometimes robustly, sometimes they don't come back at all. It really kind of varies depending on several factors, the quality of the dive crew, the difficulty in getting all of the fragments and the roots. It is not an easy job by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a lot of work out there, and associated with that is a fair amount of cost. So this year, we can't give enough thanks to Warren County Department of Planning. Sarah Frankenfeld is their GIS coordinator. And we had a long-term conversation about how better to manage the information coming in from the harvesting crews in a way that really makes sense for everybody. So I'm going to escape out of this and go over to the Park Commission website. So this is the Park Commission website. Anybody can pull it up at any time. I'll show you how to get into the milfoil program. It's very easy. Just hover over programs, go down to invasive species, and then click 2021 milfoil. This will bring you automatically into the same tool that the Park Commission staff uses and the contractor uses to show the progress on milfoil control in Lake George. It's very user-friendly. This is a heat map. Essentially, the denser and the more intense color here is the density of the area that was harvested. Very high on the yellow side, clearly cooler on the lower side. So you can zoom in very easily by scrolling in and getting a general feel. Let's say this is Harris Bay, our most challenging site. All of these yellow dots, red dots were very dense patches that they've worked within this year. And if you click over on the left-hand side, you can click over to Harris Bay, and then it'll tell you day by day the amount of buckets that were harvested. And if you don't happen to know where Harris Bay is, you can simply click on any of those days and it'll automatically zoom into that bay. So just a simple example, somebody may not know where Linden Point is. Click on Linden Point and go to that site, Oakley Way. And over here, it'll kind of zoom into exactly where those sites are. So it's really a tremendous tool. All the data is taken by the dive crews on the lake, and then it's instantly uploaded into a program that's administered by Warren County Planning and essentially uploaded into this format. So some of the more challenging bays, clearly Gull Bay, we've spent a considerable amount of time and work in. And then we noted a little while ago, Sunset Bay and Hewlett's Landing has taken considerable effort over the last couple of years to really get to a point where we're hoping that some of the dense beds will be a thing of the past there, but that has been a robustly recurring bay in the past. So switching back to the program here, we'll talk about maybe some next steps. So what happens out there? How do we decide what we're working on and what we're doing? So the areas that respond well to harvesting, between a 20 and 40% return rate, the commission and our partners plan on continuing with the current DASH program, the suction harvesting program. However, a new tool has shown up on the scene. It's called Percellacor. It's an aquatic herbicide that's been used very successfully for the last few years in New England area. And we're hoping to try it perhaps on Lake George next year. I spoke at last year's Milfoil presentation in November about Minerva Lake, and previously we had Lee Walrath from APA. He is their aquatic plant specialist and reviews and approves all treatments throughout the Lake George, or the Adirondack Park, including the Lake George and harvesting program. So Minerva Lake was a pretty tremendous success story. They had 43 acres of milfoil treatment between scattered all the way up to dense beds. And a year later, they can't find a plant. And they did all of that for less than $30,000. So it's orders of magnitude more efficient and effective than the current program that we have when you're considering large scale areas, large bays. So working with APA and DEC and our partners, we decided to take a look at a couple of the more recurring problematic areas, particularly Blair's Bay. Glen Burnie is the large one that's I really want to hit and take a closer look at to see if we can perhaps advance a trial treatment using Percellacor for 2022. For those of you that know the area, this is Blair's Bay right over here. This is the Glen Burnie area, and this is the trial treatment area that we're looking at perhaps for 2022. We've submitted some plant surveys to our contractor who's working on the permit application with us, Glenn Sullivan from Solitude Lake Management. So this is the area up in Glen Burnie. And this is the area here down here in Hewlett's. If you're familiar with Hewlett's, this is Sunset Bay, Indian Bay, and up here is Sheep Meadow Bay. There's an inset down through here of where the dense bed might be that we want to work on. So what's the process for using something like this? Percellacor has been approved for use in New York State for a little while now. The trial sites that have been approved by DEC and APA have been very successful. It's been used in New England for several years. New Hampshire has probably the longest track record. They're seeing very similar excellent results. So we started to forward this project, which is working with all of our partners and the regulatory agencies. We contracted with Warren County Soil and Water Conservation. Bob Bombard is a longtime plant expert. He did the plant surveys and submitted those to Glenn Sullivan, who is the manager of the program working with Solitude Lake Management. Glenn is currently working with Lee Walrath and DEC to submit applications and work back and forth on those. Once those applications are submitted and accepted, then there's a formal public process where we go out and reach out to all the homeowners in the area and in the region for public comments. And then ultimately it's up to the regulatory agencies to decide whether these things would be approved, or these applications would be approved for treatment. If they were approved for treatment, we'd be looking at most likely the first week of June. The treatment areas are fairly small, 4 acres for each site as compared to 43 acres for Minerva Lake. And we would hope for similar excellent results. Moving on, at the end of the day, at the end of the season, We still have quite a few remaining old milfoil mats, benthic barriers in Lake George that we've been selectively removing every year as much as we can, as much as time allows and funding allows. This year we worked in Gull Bay to remove about 60 mats, about a half acre of old plastic matting on the bottom of the lake. This right here is about 600 pounds of milfoil that was holding the mats down. All the mats were removed, and we removed about 1,000 old milfoil mats from the lake as we've transitioned into our current process of hand harvesting, suction harvesting, and hopefully move into the aquatic herbicide Percellacor in those trial areas for next year. Back on Percellacor, we'll explain much more about it. I know our commissioners have quite a few questions on it. We're going to be moving forward with very specific presentations on that topic as we go through the winter. So today is just kind of a cursory overview of where we are. So that is a quick summary of the 2021 milfoil program. And Ken, I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have on the program. So thank you.
Dave, I was happy to see nothing in Hart Bay.
Correct. Yep, Harts Bay, to our knowledge, has not had any challenges with milfoil as of yet, but as things come in, we get probably anywhere between 30 and 50 calls and emails every year. Some of the sites are known sites, some of the sites are identified as new sites, and if they reach the threshold where they're in need of being addressed, then we direct our harvester to get out there.
I'll keep an eye on it.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else have any comments or questions? It's always interesting to see when you see a report like this. Thank you, David. That the Park Commission's got a lot of balls bouncing up in the air doing that, and halves, septic and whatnot. It's more than a couple of boats chasing around speeders kind of thing, which is what some people observe us as incorrectly. Moving on from that, Justin, do we have some folks that look like they might want to make any public comments?
Let's see here.
And can we go back to the photos? I'm still getting a.
It looks like you're.
There we go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone from the public wish to make a comment? Ginger?
Are we just commenting on milfoil right now, or are we commenting on anything?
What'd you come for?
Habs. Well, I come for everything. I come for everything.
If you have, whatever, I mean, this is public comment time, and we're limited in space, but let's go.
Okay, so I think the Hab presentation might have gotten cut short. Maybe we'll have a get back to that at a later meeting. But I just, as Dave pointed out, people are asking lots and lots of questions, and I'm involved in a number of different groups, and we get a lot of questions. And we started thinking that it might be a good idea to put together a list of FAQs and get the answers from your agency, different agencies, either online or talking to people, so that that could be publicized by the various organizations as sort of a one-stop shop of here's what you need to know about HABs. So I just wanted to let people know about that. But also, one thing that we hear about a lot and we're not quite sure about is if one of these HABs does become toxic or is identified as toxic, how will people know that get their water out of the lake, either to stop drinking it and also maybe even to stop using it for showering and bathing, because it can be harmful to your skin. And it does seem like we don't really want to wait until the horse is out of the barn to set up that kind of a system. I mean, I think the state would have to set it up, and it might be like an opt-in type of system where people, it would have to be heavily publicized that people could sign up to get notifications. So I just wondered if there's any thought along those lines.
Aaron, I think that question was posed to DEC a year ago when we had this kind of a conversation on them. Are you aware of any activity going on at DEC?
I know they have a website, and I haven't been involved in any of the conversations lately. I can see what I can find out. I know there's a website specifically for the HABs, and I don't have that with me right now, but I can see what I can find out.
Okay, thank you. That is an interesting subject, and primarily because the fact that the drinking water aspect of it. Bill Mason, are you still on?
Yeah, I would love to speak to that. I want to be careful not to advocate too much, but I do think that we need to, and maybe the role of the Park Commission here is to bring people together and figure out how that will happen. I know that water quality is not normally something that the Park Commission gets involved with, but this is critically important to all of the people, especially the people who pull water from the lake. And I think it would be a fairly simple thing to be set up where you put in either an email address or a phone number that you could get text. And I think at the same time, we ought to be educating people just as much as we possibly can about how to recognize it, what makes it dangerous. I know we talk about the toxins, but you can't see the toxins. But as I spoke with some of the Jefferson Project scientists about a month ago about it, they led me to believe that there are certain things that as you look at it, when it starts forming on the surface, when the water starts to become a little bit opaque, then that's when you really should start worrying. And that the first stages where you just see the little particulate matter in the top, in the surface, maybe it's not as concerning. But I'm not a scientist, and I just said all of that, and I don't know how true all of it is, or if there are indicators that we can really educate people with. And I just think we need to expand on all of this, education and notification.
All right, let's put it on our to-do list of researching what would be the most easily utilized.
Got her hand up. You got
Whether
her.
it be text messages or phone calls. I mean, that's what we have volunteer fire
your hand up,
for with
Bill.
a big siren. So
We've had, Ken, repeated conversations with DEC about this topic. I know Walt Lender and I have spoken about it a couple of times. We're going to continue those conversations. I know it seems like an easier thing than it is. The challenge, of course, is right now the HABs that we've had in Lake George are fairly diffuse, fairly small and non-toxic so far. So the concern, I know of DEC, having spoken with Jackie Lendrum several times, and certainly from the commission's perspective, is if there's an HAB that shows up on Lake George, so far the ones that have shown up have not had any public health impacts. If we go out and publicly fire up the notifications, the chains to everybody and say there's an HAB on Lake George, we don't at the first time know the geographic scope of that HAB. We don't know the toxicity of that HAB. So the standard, DEC has been managing these things for decades now. The standard has tended to be they never recommend anybody drinks untreated water out of any water body. My understanding is that your traditional chlorination systems do exceptionally well, not only against HABs, but the toxins that result from that. That was actually surprising to me, hearing that. So that's the concern. So it's not an insurmountable thing, but I know the challenge is if the DEC and the Department of Health, every time something comes up, they say there's a harmful algae bloom on Lake George, don't drink the water, they're a little concerned about that messaging, and it would have to be done properly. So it merits conversations. I know Walt and I, again, have talked about this a little bit, and we need to continue that. But that's where the conversation has begun, and I think we need to do a little more work on it. To answer more detailed questions, of course, as I mentioned in the beginning of the meeting, Dr. Rick Relier is hoping to come in January or February, whenever they're ready, to talk about the HEBs on Lake George specifically. And I'm sure we could probably get Jackie Lendrum back from DEC to talk about the DEC's current notification system and any means to improve upon that for Lake George residents.
sounds good. Thank you. I see hands up for Freer. You folks are here.
Yeah, yes, thank you. Harrison Freer here, town of Queensbury. So with regard to milfoil, there are some folks who have milfoil near their docks, and I believe they're even willing to contract for whatever you guys approve as a removal mechanism. And I would encourage the Park Commission to sort of provide input into, if you have milfoil and you're willing to pay whatever agency you pay, and because I know that you can't get to all of the private settings, but it would be good for somebody to have, these guys are approved to properly deal with milfoil near private docks. Thank you.
And Harrison, that has happened several times in the past where there is enough capacity built into the provider, the milfoil provider, and they have taken on individual private jobs that wouldn't rise up to the level of the beds that the commission and partners are hitting. So that has happened before, most notably, I think, up just in Bolton Bay last year. Some residents paid for their docks to be cleared out. It's not inexpensive. It's $7,500 per 4-day week, but they can do a fair amount of work in a day. So most of those calls end up on my desk, and then we try to connect the homeowner to the provider to see if they can work that out.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Carol, I see your hand is up. Carol, are you unmuting yourself? I can't see you. I can just see your name.
Can you
There
hear me?
go. I can hear you now.
I'm sorry, Ken, I'm sitting in my car. So the whole issue with HABs is, as you know, extremely complicated. And our system right now is flawed in the way that it's operated. When you're looking at notifying you have to determine what you want to know in order to determine what a notification system, how to develop that system. For example, by characterizing the HABs that we've had so far as small is incorrect, in that we know that they've been covering a great deal of the South Basin. The one that even last year, from October, and when it was first observed up in Bolton, and maybe a week later down the Assembly Point area, Harris Bay, Sandy Bay, Warner Bay, and further. It very well could be part of the same bloom. It certainly wouldn't be characterized as small or minor. So unless you have a more sophisticated sampling system, it's difficult to make those assumptions. And further, if you're going to minimize or try to protect yourself from crying wolf, you might be missing something significant. So the development of how we analyze these samples, when, where, all those parameters, what we measure. Are we just measuring a picture, or are we measuring cell counts and identifying species? I don't think we're doing that right now. We need to do it. And I would love for the Park Commission, to help set up something where we define what would be the basis for making a determination. We're far from that. So look, I've been studying algal blooms since 1972, when we had our first recognized bloom on Lake George, developed models for the Environmental Protection Agency. So, and then the experimental lab work on all of this. So we have to do a better job right now of monitoring it and measuring it.
Okay, thank you. Bob Carbonen? Did I get that right?
Yes. Hi, my name is Lorraine. Bob and I are sharing a computer. Just on the Procellacor that you mentioned, has there been any study on the implication for it in drinking water, its use in drinking water?
Yeah, absolutely. State of New York is one of the most restrictive, if not the most restrictive permitting system in the country. The good thing, and I don't want to speak as an expert on it because I'm not, Core goes down at an application rate of 3 to 5 parts per billion, and it has no drinking water indications at all. So, which means that it can be applied one day and you can drink the water the same day. It shows up as non-detectable in most cases at the actual application rate. It's fairly incredible in its treatment efficacy and its lack of impact. There are extremely minimal impacts to any flora or fauna. There's no contact recreation indications. So all of this is going to be discussed in great detail over the winter as the applications are submitted. We're hoping to get Glenn Sullivan, who is our contractor working on this with us and for us. He is an expert in that process and in the chemical itself. And he will be explaining in much greater detail how the system works, how the chemical works, and how the applications are going to be applied in those two areas if they get approved.
Thank you. We'll keep everybody notified as we learn along with you. Justin, any other hands?
I don't believe so.
All right. We thank you for your patience with our whatever happened this morning, and we won't know for a while what did happen. And with that, I'll look for a motion. Motion to adjourn made, been seconded. All in favor, signify by. And thank you very much, everyone, for your efforts and for your attendance and your time. And have a happy Thanksgiving holiday. If you're traveling, drive safe.
Thanks. You too, Ken.
Thanksgiving.
Bye, everyone.